What Auburn did on Saturday changed my opinion of what will happen this weekend against Arkansas.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's a Monday. That means we are hanging out with the Lindsay Crosby. Lindsay, to me, when you look at what happened with Hank Brown, 4 touchdowns, 4 different receivers, hope kind of bubbling up on the offensive side of the ball, I think it changes what happens this weekend, or at least us predicting what's going to happen when Arkansas comes to town. We'll talk about that. We'll also touch on the defense. How do they fix what we saw this past Saturday? And just overall thoughts about the current state of Auburn football. But Lindsay, to me, what I saw Saturday with Hank Brown, going into it, or I guess leaving the Cal game, I said, hey, I'm not quite ready to pick Auburn to beat Arkansas at this point. After what happened Saturday with Hank Brown kind of leading this resurgence of offense, I now think Auburn does take care of business at home against Arkansas on Saturday.
It feels more likely now, seeing what the new floor can be with Hank Brown. And it's been one game, right? But being able to seeing how much more decisive he could be, how much quicker he could pull the trigger on a throw and avoid the worst possible outcomes, right? I mean, the worst outcome is interception. And there's maybe a ball or two that could have been picked off. He didn't throw an interception. And something that I feel like that I've been the one who's talked a lot about this. I talk a lot about the chemistry between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. Who was Auburn's leading receiver from a receptions perspective? Cam Brown, who has been on the second team with Hank Brown all spring, all through the fall camp. Cam Brown steps in for a hurt Cam Coleman, 4 catches, 80 yards, catches I think the first touchdown pass.
Yep. And
just really kind of shows you he actually PFF, not the end all be all, but he grades out as Auburn's highest graded wide receiver on PFF. And so it's just one of those, okay, you have another little dimension here because maybe you actually can get some of these other receivers involved in the game plan when we all thought it was going to kind of just funnel to Keandre Lambert-Smith.
Yeah, and obviously Keandre Lambert-Smith did have a good game. I think he led in total yards, mainly because of that 50-yard completion from Hank Brown. That was probably the best throw of the day. It was an incredible ball placement there. But an absolute dime. But it's just there seems to be hope again that there's a quarterback back there that can get the ball in these playmakers' hands. Obviously, he'll have the addition, we think. Cam Coleman will play on Saturday. I kind of got the feeling he could have played against New Mexico if it was an SEC opponent and they felt like they needed him. It kind of felt like that, Lindsay. So as of right now, I'm expecting Cam Coleman to be out there this Saturday. We'll see what Hugh Freeze says at his presser later today. I'm sure he'll be asked that. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's not necessarily about Hank. I think it's about what Hank represents. And that is a fresh start and maybe some fresh opportunities for a lot of guys on the offensive side of the ball. And that's nothing against Peyton, but after that loss against Cal and Peyton's performance, this team, this program, especially the fan base, they needed something new. They needed a click or reset button, and props to Hugh Freeze for doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a week ago I came on this show and I said, the time to make a quarterback change is now. You can't,
they did it.
Making it after Georgia doesn't make a lot of sense. Making it this is the time to do it. And Hugh Freeze did it. It kind of, obviously, he's not spoken at detail about the thought process and everything that went into that in the detail that I'm looking for. But it felt like, to me, this was something of, hey, Peyton Thorne didn't get it done last year. We think with a better situation, with a better supporting cast around him, whether it's offensive line, wide receivers, whatever, he can get it done. And when you saw that, hey, he wasn't getting it done, Hugh was very quick to go and make the move to Hank Brown. And it feels like now we kind of have the ability to look at this offense the way it was intended to be. It felt like in the first 2 weeks, Auburn was going out of their way to pass the ball because they wanted to give Peyton Thorne the chance to show that he could orchestrate a deadly aerial attack. They wanted to get all these wide receivers in, and it felt like almost at times they were forcing the passing game. And with Hank Brown, Jarquez had, I think, his highest number of touches in an Auburn uniform. You got all three backs involved, but you got, I think it was it 6 different receivers caught passes, as well as 3 different tight ends. Like, you were able to spread the ball around. You were able to
8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I think 8 guys caught passes.
Yeah, there we go. I think PFF had it listed.
Or 10. Looks like it's 10.
Yeah, it's everybody who was targeted caught at least one pass except for Rico Walker, and he got targeted once. He was in there for 2 pass snaps, but other than that, everybody else who got targeted, he completed 17 passes to 10 different receivers. And it felt more like this was not the platonic ideal of the offense, but this is more like what they wanted to do. Having the option to run or to pass, mixing them up whenever they wanted to, more than enough to be effective.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it looked great. And I think the offensive line, I'm kind of on an island. I think it feels like everybody's being super critical of the offensive line. Even after Cal, I said, I don't think that's the problem here. And I think we saw like, oh, okay, if the quarterback gets rid of the football in a timely manner, they're fine. They're fine. Percy Lewis, according to PFF, he scored really well, an 84.5 offensive grade with an 83.9 pass block and an 80.7 run blocking grade. Like, that's really good. That is really, really good. So props to Percy Lewis for scoring that high. Tyler Johnson did well. He only played 12 snaps, but he graded out pretty well too, especially in the run blocking. So, I mean, this is an offensive line that I do think is going to get better, and it will get better as the quarterback gets better. I mean, just because they're not going to have to block for as long, because the offense, like you said, it looked like the offense that Hugh Freeze wants to run.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest strength that Hank has over Peyton, was just the willingness to get the ball out on time, on target, and stride. And, not every throw was perfect. You had plays where he threw it behind a guy or whatever.
Yeah.
But the point was, he made the throw. He got the throw out when he should have gotten the throw out. And like you said there, when you're an offensive lineman and your quarterback's not throwing the ball for whatever reason, like, eventually you are going to get beat. It just, like, the question's going to be, how long does it take? Yeah. And like, it felt like with Hank back there, it was just plenty of time to get the ball out without having to worry about a rusher in your face or having to move the pocket because somebody lost contain or whatever, because you were decisive with it. And I think at a certain point, that is more important than just sheer arm talent. Like, Holden Garrett winning for that Hail Mary at the end of the first half for a reason. It's because he has a better arm, can throw it farther than Hank Brown can. But at a certain point, that's not what the most important thing is. It's getting the ball out on time and staying on schedule. And that's what Hank gives you that Peyton wasn't able to, and that nobody else in that room, we think, is at the point where they can do that right now.
Yeah, and apparently, like, the wet ball was an issue for Hank as well. And so I'm sure they'll work on that. Like, soak the balls in water, and go through a few, reps.
I volunteer to show up to the Performance Center with a super soaker if they'll have me. And I'll just sit there and just hit Hank with a super soaker during the play.
Yeah, I think you'd be really good at that. I think you'd be really good at that.
Thank you. Yeah, I have kids, and so I practice a lot.
Sure. No, I'm sure you blast your children 100%. As a father should, 100%. So, but yeah, Auburn, according to our friends at FanDuel, a 3.5-point favorite against Arkansas on Saturday. If they would have dropped the line right after the Cal game, I don't think that would have been the case. I don't think Auburn would have been favored, right? Like, is that a crazy thing to say? Are we being too harsh?
Well, no, I think because at that time, you'd have something where Arkansas was coming off of that Oklahoma State game, whereas we're coming off of Cal. I feel like you could have had an argument that line would have been skewed the other direction, that Arkansas would have been a road favorite and we'd have been a home dog. But after another week of college football, they almost lost to a UAB squad that got upset by ULM. It's that, and so transitive property of college football, ULM's almost better than Arkansas is. And so you're at that point where, you didn't know what team you were going to get. I don't think they knew what team Auburn was going to be. And I think now we know it's a better version of what we saw against Cal.
We hope.
What's the delta? Yeah, we hope.
Hope.
What's the delta between the Power 5 opponent and the non-Power 5 opponent? We don't know that yet.
There's just been Auburn has looked like a different team virtually every week so far this season. And you can kind of say the same for Arkansas. We've watched Arkansas a bunch and they look different. Who they open with? It's Arkansas Pine Bluff, I think. They scored at will. And then Oklahoma State, they scored a lot of points in that game too. I know they had extra time, but still, it's just, I think this Arkansas team's got a good offense. It's just, what can our defense do to slow that down, Lindsay? And let's talk about some of the things that this defense needs to do differently, because it could be a problem this weekend. So that's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Hey, today's show is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Lindsay, we all love 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast, whether you've got a long list of things to do for work or DIY projects around the home, or you just aren't motivated for that workout. You got to get the 5 Hour Energy shot, my guy. You got to get juiced.
Maybe you're exhausted from reeling in big fish all weekend.
That's right. That's right. And just, puking all over the boat. Yep, that's me. That's me. Hey, head over to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th. On one order, it cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Head over to 5hourenergy.com today. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. Lindsay, quick question. Quick question. Can you imagine buying Auburn gear anywhere else?
I would never do that. It'd be nowhere but Alumni Hall. See this baby blue hat? Baby blue, best color for your dad. Alumni Hall.
Yep. I bought this hat from Alumni Hall as well. They've got 3 physical locations in Auburn, in Opelika, and in Huntsville. They're all fantastic. They are all fantastic.
But
I
Zach,
promise.
what if I don't live in Auburn, Opelika, or Huntsville?
Well, you can go to alumnihall.com. You can go to alumnihall.com. You can see everything they've got. They've even got non-Auburn stuff too. If you're shopping for other people, check it out. Alumnihall.com, or 3 great physical locations in Auburn, Opelika, and Huntsville. All right. So the defense, major talking point here of how they're using their best pass rushers. And according to Pro Football Focus, we talked about this a ton after the game, and it's been a big thing on social media. And just, I've already talked about it a ton, and I'm just not done talking about it, Lindsay, because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So according to Pro Football Focus, Kieron Crawford, he played 33 snaps.
That's good.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
10 of them, he was in coverage. A third of supposedly the second best pass rusher on the team. A guy you brought in to bolster your depth at pass rusher. A third of them, he was in coverage. And then he only rushed the passer on 11 snaps.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. Yeah,
it's wild. It's just crazy to me.
What I do...
just real quick. McLeod, 48 snaps on Saturday. He was in coverage for 20 of them. He rushed the passer 16 times.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Okay, so here's the thing I think you're missing. At Arkansas State, 2 seasons, 45 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 7 QB hurries, and a blocked field goal last year. but for some reason, they don't list the 47 pass breakups that he obviously had, because that is what I'm sorry. I'm being told that he actually did not have pass breakups at Arkansas State. They used him exclusively to rush the passer. I'm sorry. My apologies. I for some reason, I just assumed he had this rich history of dropping into coverage often, frequently, and often, because, he has such a long career in football. He understands all the different dimensions of the game and how to do all these different things, right? That's on me. I'm sorry.
So between the two of them, they were targeted 3 times in coverage, and they allowed a completion all 3 times.
And I'm going to go on a limb and say that's less than ideal.
I just don't get it. I don't get, there's a lot of stuff where we question coaches and you can see the argument for it. We just disagree. This one, I'm trying to play devil's advocate and understand what DJ Durkin is doing here. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Especially when your containment all season has been atrocious.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't good on Saturday, and you're playing a mobile quarterback this Saturday against Arkansas. These guys that you've asked, which traditionally your edge guys are tasked with being a big part of, containment when it comes to assignments, you need them on the line. And I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around it.
I think it would be one thing if you had so many amazing pass rushers that you could throw 4 or 5 on the field at once. And it's like, well, we're not going to send all 5 guys, right? Maybe we'll disguise something, and 2 or 3 times a game we'll disguise something where this dude's Kieran Crawford's supposed to come, but he'll drop back instead. But a combined 30 times, that's too much. That doesn't make sense. And you're doing that, but then you had 1 tackle for loss. You had no sacks in the entire game. And it's like, what are we doing here, guys? You had 13 quarterback hurries. You had 1 hit on the quarterback. And according to the PFF, that was from Keontae Scott. It wasn't even from a designated pass rusher. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It almost feels like trying to be a little bit too fancy, right? Like, there's a difference in doing something a few times so that it's on tape and another team has to prepare for it, and making that a major part of your game plan.
There's just no way, though, Lindsay, when an offense is preparing against Auburn's defense, where they're not having a conversation about 35 being like, why are they not sending him after the quarterback? I just refuse to believe that they're not having that conversation of I hope they keep him in the flats against us.
Yeah. It's like, before the snap, where's 35? Where's 24? To make sure we know where they are and make sure they're accounted for. And then, hey, you're just going to drop them out. You're just going to drop them out of the pass. Sure. Great. All right. That's fine. Let them cover the flats. Who cares? It's an odd move. And I feel like it's low-hanging fruit on, if you want to figure out how Auburn can improve on defense against a mobile quarterback week over week, that is a very easy adjustment to make. And it's like, hey, let's stop dropping these guys in coverage and just let them go after the quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look at the pass rushing grades, Kieran Crawford has the best one on the team. And it's like, he only rushed the passer 11 times on Saturday.
Yeah. Only 2 guys were even above a 65, and it's Keldrick Falk and Kieran Crawford. And Falk got 39 rushes, Crawford got 11. It's like, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing here?
Yeah, it's got to change. That has to change, right? And I know that I'm fairly confident that this staff is somewhat concerned about lack of depth in the defensive back room.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of saw what it looked like on Saturday when one guy didn't play, with that being Kayan Lee. And hopefully he's back and ready to go on Saturday. But the way you fix that in my opinion, the best way to help your defensive backs is to pressure the quarterback. And maybe it's because they felt like they haven't needed to do anything super complex. I'm hoping that's it. But surely you would have rolled the dice and done some more stuff against Cal. But then again, the second half against Cal is fine. So I don't know, man. I've been thinking about it nonstop. And I think other Auburn fans have too, based on the conversation online. So it's just been interesting. It's fascinating to me that that's how they're using their edge rushers.
It really does not make sense. I also find it a little bit odd. You gave 3 total snaps to Gage Keys. And I just, for some reason, I thought he was going to be a bigger part of your mix up front than he is. And I think that kind of comes back to the whole no pass rush, no impact on the quarterback. Help out the defensive backs a little bit.
Yeah. Well, when you're only having 3 down linemen, there's not as many snaps to go around to defensive linemen, you know? You know what I'm saying? It's just, I'm shocked. I'm shocked by it. And we'll see. I mean, props to the staff, like over the course of the season so far, they have like addressed the issues. Mm-hmm. Is this the next one that they tackle this week? I don't know. But against Arkansas, you're going to have to contain their quarterback, or they're going to score points. So We'll see how they use them. We will see how they use them. More thoughts from Saturday coming up, specifically some guys that we thought aren't getting a whole lot of love, but guys that I think played a good game on Saturday. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook, Lindsay. We talked about it. Auburn, a 3.5-point favorite at home, thanks to our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. If you had to guess right now, we're several days out from the game. Mm-hmm. But right now, where are you leaning? Auburn -3.5 or Arkansas +3.5?
I think I'm taking Auburn 3.5 at home. Jordan Hare is a different beast. And I think we know that by now. And Auburn has a strong tradition dating back to Gus Malzahn of just stomping Arkansas. And I feel like that's not going to change.
That's true. The over-under is 58.5. I'm probably staying away from that line.
Yeah, I'm just not touching that.
I'm not touching that one. Because I could see the final of this being 42-35. I could also see it being one of those weird games where it's like 17-10 and the defenses show up. I don't know.
17-13.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling something weird like that. But hey, FanDuel right now, head over to FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, a $5 bet gets you a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. It's a great deal. It's going to cost more than $5. So go ahead and throw down a $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. That is America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Lindsay. Guys who are kind of like vibing under the radar a little bit from this past Saturday. And I want to stay on the offensive line, specifically with Braden Joyner. Yeah, he's a guy that was kind of rotated in. Mm-hmm. He played 30 snaps at left guard on Saturday. And we didn't really talk a whole lot about him this offseason being a depth piece. They had to do some moving around on the offensive line because of Xavier Miller missing some time.
Right.
And so, they scooted Dylan Wade over to tackle. And I think Tate Johnson got the start at left guard, but Braden Joyner played a ton of the snaps there. And so I just kind of feel like that's worth noting. And I think he did a pretty decent job, all things considered.
PFF has him as the 3rd highest graded lineman for Auburn from that game at a 77.1, which is nice. The guy for me, we saw Brandon Frazier leave the game with what they thought was a broken foot. I don't quite know if we have a confirmation on that yet. I'm sure we'll hear more today in the press conference. But Micah Riley-Duggar gets a chance to actually play snaps at Auburn. Feels like the first time in his career. It's not, but it feels like it. Has a touchdown catch. Only gets 7 snaps. So it's a small sample size, but thought he looked really good. He got a couple routes. Obviously caught a touchdown in one. It looked like he got open in the other one, but the ball didn't come to him.
Sure.
I mean, for having a tight end room that is so senior laden and upperclassman laden, and you're going to have a lot of turnover in there. He's important. He's important. Him being able to play, get some experience, I think is going to be big. And then Rico Walker got 9 snaps. He got the chance to get in there and play as well, mostly in run blocking situations. He graded out really well, by the way, on that.
But despite the drop, he still graded pretty well, which is interesting.
So like Micah Riley and Rico Walker together as like the next wave of tight end talent. Like I feel like they both got a chance to actually get out there and do some stuff. And I was impressed with it.
Yeah, the tight end room has been kind of weird this year. I mean, Rivaldo Fairweather, like he finally was productive and didn't have any kind of like mental errors this past Saturday. So by far his best game of the season so far, in my opinion. But like they've kind of fell a little bit flat so far to be a room where there's a lot of leadership, like Luke Deal.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been particularly great so far this year as a blocker or a receiver, obviously. Yeah. And then, Brandon Frazier you just mentioned, but like, I just feel like we saw more of him a year ago. Could that be, more attention to the receivers and just overall lack of offensive presence in the Cal game? Sure, probably. But I just expected a different outcome with these tight ends. So props to Micah Riley specifically for making the most of the opportunity. I think that's a great one that you highlight. No question about it. No question about it. Another guy that I think is worth mentioning in this is Sylvester Smith. Got the start at safety, and he's a guy that I think is going to come along more and more over the course of the season. He was impactful early in the game, had a key stop early. It may have been in the first drive or maybe the second drive, but he's a guy that will hit the stew out of you. He's rangy. He moves so well. Once he kind of gets more and more reps and becomes just a smarter football player, which is what happens as you play the game more, I think Sylvester Smith is going to be really, really special before he's done here.
Yeah, I was impressed with what he did. I liked how much Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Alston kind of flashed behind Jarquez Hunter. We mentioned Jarquez got 20 carries for 155, but this was the first time, and Alston got a big part of that. He had 80 yards on 10 carries. But this was kind of the first time where it really kind of felt like a 3-headed monster at running back. And I know Cobb only came out with 34 or something yards. It's still almost 5 yards a carry. This is the first time where it really felt like all 3 backs were in the plan to be used and being used effectively.
I don't love that when Cobb is used with the starters, like when the game is still close, it's gimmicky. It's like putting him in motion and stuff. I wish they just use him as a normal running back with the ones. And you don't really see them use them with the ones until the backup quarterback is in. So like, I don't love that. I get it, but I don't love it. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, they're all 3 really talented, no question. Jarquez and Damari got to hold on to the freaking football. I've said that twice now. That's got to get fixed because that will hurt you in a big game. Hurt us against Cal, obviously. So, I think those are good ones. For sure. Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. If you're looking for the MLB, it's the show is called First Pitch, wherever you get your podcast. If you're looking for the Atlanta Braves specifically, Braves Today, both a podcast and a Substack. And also the Auburn baseball nugs are going on the Barn Auburn.
Yes.
So go check that out as well.
TheBarnAuburn.com is where I'm putting all of my stuff as well. Be sure to go subscribe over there. In the meantime, hey, like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.